Tim Laidler is a former serving veteran of Afghanistan. He's an alumni of UBC, and he's currently doing his master's program in counseling psychology at UBC. And he's the, well, he does many things right now. He'll probably tell you about that. But I think what he'll talk about is his experience of living the stresses in life, both here in the civilian world and in the military world. Most of all, as a man, what has that done to him and how he was so successful in getting where he's got to in life. So, Tim Laidler, welcome.
Thank you, Dr. Westwood, and congratulations to the whole team, John Olaf, for securing your grant there. I was happy to write a reference letter supporting the initiative on behalf of the Veterans Transition Network. And just to give everyone a little bit of history about myself and this program here at UBC, the Veterans Transition Network was started by UBC. It's a non-profit organization. It was created last year after almost 15 years of research done by Dr. Mark Westwood and Dr. David Kuhl around the Veterans Transition Program. The Veterans Transition Program is a 10-day group-based program that helps veterans overcome struggles in their transitions. It's a program that's helped me, and I've gone through it after I came home from Afghanistan. And it's something that I saw as needed to be out there more in the community, something that many people here at UBC realized needed to be out there in the community more. And after doing all the research and getting the evaluation completed, the university was proud to start the Veterans Transition Network, and now we deliver this program across the country with federal funding. I'd like to talk today a little bit about my personal story and just share some things from Afghanistan, some things in my life that I've learned going through this Veterans Transition Program, really taking time to look inward and reflecting on not only 10 years plus I've spent now in the military, but also growing up here, going to UBC, grew up in Port Moody, just being a man in society and the impacts that played on my transition home and some of the stress things Mark mentioned that I've talked about and dealt with. So I was 22 when I deployed to Afghanistan. I was with the British Columbia Regiment downtown on Beatty Street. I was living in a frat house down the street at UBC. I took off between my third and fourth year of my undergrad degree to deploy, and found myself doing some of the more dangerous jobs in Afghanistan, primarily guarding supply convoys through Kandahar City to reinforce frontline operating troops that were trying to do things like build the wells, build the schoolhouses, provide security so the contractors could actually go into the villages and make the changes that our mission under NATO set out to do. I saw a lot of different things in Afghanistan. There was definitely the more overt combat, the suicide bombings and the improvised explosive devices, but that definitely had an impact on me, and it's not what I want to talk about today though. I want to talk about something that I hope more people can connect to, and it's one thing that happened over in Afghanistan to me that really did come back with me and took a lot of my emotional energy processing it through. And it may seem like a small, insignificant even event, but I want to share it all the same. I haven't really spoken about this one before. So the glorious job, if you want to call it that, was the convoy escort in Afghanistan. That was the one where there was all the attention on you. You had the American air cover coming in. Everyone was excited but scared to go on the convoys. Our secondary task, which was more administrative in its nature, was guarding the front gate of the airfield. So we had approximately 1,500 Afghan employees that would come onto our camp every day to work different labor jobs around the camp. At that point, it had almost 50,000 military and civilian personnel living on the airfield. So it became like a small city. It had a bus route, there were shops popping up everywhere. It was very much a city that needed all the sort of infrastructure that a city would require, and obviously the labor there to do it. That's why we brought so many Afghan contractors into work. Now my job on the front gate would be to search those vehicles coming in, delivering supplies, all Afghan owned, many making the arduous journey up from Pakistan through some of the heaviest fighting areas and onto the camp in Afghanistan. Over the time, the 8 months I spent in Afghanistan, we became very close with the people, and we became very close with the truck drivers too, who would be making this harrowing journey through Taliban territory to get supplies to reinforce the camp. I remember speaking with one of the truck drivers who had the tattoo of the Mujahideen down his arm and was proud to fought the Russians when they invaded, and asked him, if he carries an AK-47 or a machine gun when he does these journeys. And he said, no, we're not allowed. The Afghan army will take them away from us. said, well, how do you defend yourself? And he says, well, it's easy. We get 10 trucks together, these big, huge semi-trucks. We go in a very tight convoy, and if a pickup truck full of Taliban come to attack us, we park all our vehicles, we take the keys out, and we run away and hide. And then these Taliban are trying this logistical issue of trying to start these jingle trucks, they were called, without keys. They're trying to hotwire them. Eventually, after a few hours, they give up and they drive on the way, and the truck drivers go back in their vehicles and continue on to camp. Crafty. But there was real danger to those truck drivers, and the one issue that I wanted to bring up was, it was one of my first weeks on the gate guard. Again, I'm very socially liberal guy from Vancouver, UBC student by my sort of inherent culture with military training, and I was very cognizant of not wanting to be that oppressive force. I wanted to be the peacekeeper, I wanted to be the change maker, and obviously using military force if necessary as a self-defense mechanism. And the position I was put in on that front gate though was as a gatekeeper to who comes on and who goes off. And one of these truck drivers came through once, and he had been upset by something that happened with one of the soldiers that worked on the front gate. He came to us through a translator and said, he was trying to gesture, he was saying something about a CD. We later found out what had happened is that when someone searched his vehicle, they had taken his portable DVD drive. And inside that drive was a bunch of family pictures and family videos that he had put onto, taken a lot of time, I guess, and put onto the CD so we could watch it while he went on these 3-4 day treks up through Pakistan to Afghanistan. Obviously, he was very close to him. He risked a lot to come forward to us to bring this issue up. And margaritas in the background, so he would watch this, the family videos, and he risked coming to us, risked losing his contract if his contractor found out that he was making an issue at the front gate because of the security threat, and came up to me with the translator and said, I want to get my DVD back. You can keep the portable DVD drive as is in the protocol, that no electronics can come onto base because they can be used to make explosives, but he just wanted to get the CD back. So I went into our confiscation area, I looked through multiple different devices that had been confiscated. I brought 3 of them out and showed them to him. He said, no, none of those are them. So I walked back in, I couldn't find any other ones, and I went out to one of the sergeants who was training us to do the handover, and this is, again, the beginning of my tour. So there's a sergeant training us to run the front gate, and I say to him, hey, Sarge, this is a situation, what are we doing? He says, well, I'm not going to be here in a week, what are you going to do? And I had to make a split decision. Do I take this Afghan and let him go into the confiscation area against our protocol, potentially getting intelligence on our protocols and all these sort of things, or do I become this force that I don't want to be, this sort of administrative, bureaucratic almost, shut him down, send him on his way, potentially make an enemy out of him? I struggled with this for quite a while until another colleague of mine came up. I said, okay, let's just get this Afghan, let's put him in the confiscation bin, he can grab the CD, go on his way, he's happy. And the guy just said, absolutely not. We had a bit of a standoff. In the end, he was told to leave, he didn't get his CD back. And again, this is something that weighed heavily on my mind because it was symbolic of a shift inside that I become what I didn't want to be over there. And that was 1 week into my tour. So this is something that I bring up because on the transition out of that culture, it's almost a deprogramming of that hyper-masculine military culture that really was my main barrier to transition. In the media they talk about PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, all these mental health diagnoses that we can give to try and put a label on exactly what I was going through. But it was almost referred to as a moral injury. I lost the values that I had been brought up with. I put them aside in order to achieve a difficult task. And that's something that weighed heavily on my mind and on my heart. And it took me a lot of work. And thanks to Dr. Westwood and the rest of the guys at the Veterans Transition Program, I was able to reconcile who I was in this transition. But it did take a few years, and there was quite a bit of struggles. To sort of wrap this up and tie it into what we're doing here at UBC today, I tell that story because that's something that I didn't need to be in Afghanistan to experience. When I talk about struggling after service, people assume it's the movies, the Hollywood shoot 'em up gore that's causing the issues, but it's not always the case. And as I've learned now, helping expand this program across the country, many of the veterans who come into the organization and take our program, they're not talking about having to take a life. They're talking about having to portray their core values. And how do they reconcile that now that they've come back to Canada? So when we think about what we're doing here this week in Thrive and all the other people who are in our society may be able to relate to what I've talked about, I think often that it was the military, obviously, that gave me this hyper-masculine culture, but it started a lot earlier than the military. It was how I was grown up as a child that really set the precedent that set me up in a way. For when I came home, I didn't have the tools, I didn't know how to ask for help, I didn't know the difference between a psychologist and a psychiatrist. I had a vague idea what counseling was from movies, but I wasn't ever going to step forward for help. And if I can end on the message of what I can offer and what we can offer from learning the Veterans Transition Program to the Men's Health Initiative is how to bridge that gap in getting men to ask for help. I don't know if it's ever going to happen. In our program, we've had to take, we've had to use, let's say, asymmetric warfare and get them into a peer-to-peer system. To date, 75% of people who come through our 10-day program are referred by a close friend who had also taken the program. They're almost dragged in and said, you can trust these guys, these psychologists know what they're doing, take this program, and tell me what you think after. And time again, when we interview people on their entrance, say, why are you taking it? What are you looking to gain out of this program? And they'll start to wrestle and say, well, I don't know, I guess I've struggled a bit, but it's not as bad as my other buddies, but I guess, well, Joe told me I should take it, so that's what I'm here. And I think that's the biggest message. Hopefully that can help the next steps of this project. So thanks for having me.